President Emmanuel Macron is delivering an address to the French people. This coming just one day after the French government fell following that no confidence vote in Parliament over its budget plan. Stephen Carroll is Bloomberg Radio Daybreak Europe anchor. He joins us once again from our Paris bureau. Stephen, I know you've been monitoring this address in real time. What are we learning about the French president?
The big headline is Emmanuel Macron says he will not resign before the end of his term in 2027. So that's going against the calls of some politicians and the polls. Two new ones out today showing, in one case, 61% of people want Emmanuel Macron to resign, the other in and around the mid-50s. So he's not responding to those calls shown in those polls or from those politicians, particularly on the left wing, who've called for his resignation. Instead, he's saying that he wants to create a government that represents the political forces that exist in Parliament, a group of people who can work together to tackle, and he's been listing off some of the challenges facing France, things like the economic situation, the competitiveness issue in Europe, the climate, and indeed conflicts he's mentioned as well, that will need more support and a functional French government to be able to tackle them. He said he'll be naming his Prime Minister in the coming days, so not tonight being the short answer. We had been wondering whether or not he might surprise us with a name. There's been a series of meetings happening all day at the Elysee Palace with various political leaders, which has led to lots of speculation about who could be in the running for this job. But for the moment, Emmanuel Macron holding course. He's still speaking as I'm speaking to you, Tim, but he seems to be sticking to his plan, sticking to his mandate, and he's even mentioned the weekend reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral as an event that he is looking forward to.
As you know, Stephen, Michel Barnier lost that no confidence vote, and for the first time in more than 60 years, the French government has been brought down by a no confidence vote by the MPs here, and that would potentially make him the shortest serving prime minister in modern history of France since he just came in September. So when you're speaking about these potential people who could come in and take that position, what kind of names are popping up right now?
Okay, so you have to, there are lots of names being put out there. Some people are nominating themselves, like the former socialist presidential candidate Ségolène Royal, who said that she was available if Emmanuel Macron wanted to pick her as Prime Minister. I think that's pretty unlikely, but good for her to put herself forward. The key thing that Emmanuel Macron needs in this is somebody who can try and create a majority, or at least a working minority in Parliament. The maths are pretty complicated because the National Assembly is so fractured from the big groupings on the far left and the far right, and he's currently working, or at least the last coalition that was built was with a centre-right party, wasn't big enough to be able to pass a budget, as we saw. So really we're focusing on the centre-left party, the Socialist Party, to see if somebody could emerge perhaps from that fold that might be able to unite people around them. So the names being spoken about are the former Socialist Prime Minister, Bernard Cazeneuve, other centrist politicians, Sébastien Lecornu, who's currently the Defence Minister. We're also thinking about François Bayrou, who's a long-standing centrist politician in France. A couple of names being mentioned too from the centre-right as well. The former Minister François Bayrou, who was from the centre-right party, also being mentioned too. But it's really difficult to see how any of these names, with perhaps the exceptions of those on the left, would change the calculations or would change the situation that Michel Barnier had. He was somebody from the centre-right political tradition. He had this long experience as a storied negotiator, and yet he wasn't able to do it. So it's a big challenge to figure out who actually might be able to do it if they're handed this job.
Yeah, it kind of also raises the question, like, who would want a challenge such as this, given the track record, at least in recent months, Stephen. France will now have a caretaker government. What does that mean?
So for now, it essentially means that everyone remains in their job. The kind of legal procedure that follows the vote of no confidence is that Michel Barnier had to go to the Elysee Palace to meet Emmanuel Macron earlier this morning to tender his resignation and the resignation of the government. In return, Emmanuel Macron says that he had taken notice of that resignation, but he asked Michel Barnier and his colleagues to stay on and keep things ticking over, essentially until a new Prime Minister is appointed. Now, Emmanuel Macron, it should be said, did say that he would appoint a Prime Minister in the coming days, so it won't be like the last time around where it took months. months between July and September for him to find a candidate for Prime Minister. We are expecting him to move a little bit faster than that. In terms of the finances, which is the key part here, because the reason that the government fell was over the budget. The budget currently runs till the end of this year. That's not that far away, as we know. So Emmanuel Macron did say in his address that they would be passing the special law to allow for, I suppose, the kind of temporary, sort of continuing resolution to happen with the French budget, where essentially what they do is they take the 2024 budget, divide it in 12, and they give it out month by month. So that means that you can continue to raise taxes, pay benefits, run state services, but not really make any new decisions about that. And economists have been warning that even in that situation, France's budget deficit, which was already quite large, could get even bigger. And that's, of course, what we'd be worried about if we're watching it from a market's point of view.